You want to do what now? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Put an RV on your roof? Exactly, I replied, my voice firm. It's a landscaping project. Bob's eyes widened. Landscaping? He chuckled. That's one way to put it. All right, you've got yourself a deal. This I gotta see. The war started with a flimsy piece of paper, an unwelcome guest amongst the bills and birthday cards in my mailbox. Notice of violation, it declared in bold, accusatory letters. My heart sank. What had I done now? Trimmed my hedges too enthusiastically, planted the wrong kind of petunias? I unfolded the notice, my confusion growing with each line. Apparently, my camper, my trusty steed for weekend adventures, was aesthetically incompatible with the neighborhood. It was, the letter declared with a flourish of bureaucratic jargon, disruptive to the harmonious flow of the community landscape. Harmonious flow? I scoffed, glancing at my camper. It was a perfectly respectable vehicle, neatly parked in my driveway, well within my property line. It wasn't some rusty eyesore. It was a symbol of my adventurous spirit, my escape from the monotony of suburban life. But the HOA, led by the ever-vigilant Karen, had decided that my camper was an affront to their carefully curated vision of suburban perfection. They demanded its removal, threatening a fine of $100 a day until it was gone. $100 a day? I exclaimed to my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who was tinkering with his vintage motorcycle, which, ironically, was parked in his driveway. They're fining me for a camper. Mr. Johnson chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Don't you know, Stanley? Campers are disruptive. They clash with the... what was it? Ah, yes, the tranquil ambiance of our residential enclave. I rolled my eyes. Tranquil ambiance? It's a camper, Mr. Johnson, not a monster truck rally. But the HOA, with Karen at the helm, was on a power trip, enforcing their arbitrary rules with an iron fist. And the worst part? They were hypocrites. My other neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, had a boat the size of a small yacht parked in her driveway. Mr. Henderson, the HOA president himself, had a trailer for his lawn care business permanently stationed in his yard. And yet my camper, my humble vessel for weekend getaways, was the one deemed aesthetically incompatible. It was a personal attack, a blatant display of the HOA's selective enforcement and their vendetta against me. And that's when I decided to fight back. Not with angry letters or petty complaints, but with a plan so absurd, so outlandish, so gloriously over the top, that it would make their heads spin. If they don't want a camper in my driveway, I muttered to myself, a mischievous grin spreading across my face, then I'll give them a camper they'll never forget. The idea, as ridiculous as it was brilliant, was born. I was going to park an RV on my roof. The HOA wanted to play games? Fine. I'd play a game they'd never forget. If they didn't want a camper in my driveway, I'd give them a camper they couldn't ignore. A camper that would become a local legend, a symbol of my defiance against their petty tyranny. A camper on my roof. They want to control what's on the ground? I muttered to myself, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. Fine, I'll take it to the sky. The plan was audacious, ridiculous, and absolutely perfect. I'd rent a crane, hoist a full-size RV onto my roof, and create the ultimate rooftop retreat. It would be a middle finger to the HOA, a beacon of freedom, and a constant reminder that they couldn't control my spirit, no matter how many rules they wrote. The first step was finding the right RV. Not just any RV would do. It had to be grand, imposing, and slightly ridiculous. I scoured the internet, browsing through listings until I found the perfect candidate. A vintage Airstream, gleaming silver, with a spacious interior and a rooftop deck perfect for stargazing, and HOA mocking. Next, the crane. I contacted a local construction company explaining my unusual request. The operator, a burly man named Bob with a booming laugh, was initially skeptical. "You want to do what?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "Put an RV on your roof?" "Exactly," I replied, my voice firm. "It's a landscaping project." Bob's eyes widened. "Landscaping?" He chuckled. "That's one way to put it. All right, you've got yourself a deal. This I gotta see." The day of the RV installation was a spectacle. Neighbors gathered, their phones held high, ready to capture the absurdity for posterity. The crane arrived, its massive arm towering over the houses, a mechanical giant ready to perform a feat of suburban defiance. Bob, perched in the crane's cabin, winked at me as he maneuvered the RV into position. "Ready for liftoff?" he boomed through the loudspeaker. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The crane's engine roared, and the RV slowly ascended, a gleaming silver spaceship rising above the suburban landscape. It was a surreal sight, a testament to my determination to fight the HOA's tyranny, one ridiculous rooftop camper at a time. Once the RV was securely in place, the real fun began. I hired a team of electricians to install neon lights that outlined the RV's shape, creating a dazzling nighttime display. A giant, custom-made sign proclaiming "Home Sweet Home" in bold, flashing letters was mounted on the side, a cheeky nod to the HOA's obsession with aesthetic compatibility. And to top it off, I added a collection of quirky decorations: a giant inflatable flamingo, a disco ball, and a wind chime that played the Star-Spangled Banner, because why not? The HOA, naturally, was apoplectic. Karen, her face a mask of indignant fury, stormed through the neighborhood, her voice echoing with threats and accusations. But her words were powerless against my rooftop oasis. I had found the ultimate loophole, the perfect blend of defiance and absurdity. And the RV, my gleaming, neon-lit HOA mocking sanctuary, was just the beginning. Making that rooftop RV a true home sweet home was the next phase of my master plan. I wasn't just going to park it up there and call it a day. I was going to create a luxurious HOA mocking oasis in the sky. First, I had those solar panels installed, gleaming black rectangles covering the RV's roof. Not only would they power my rooftop haven, but they'd also stick it to the HOA's complaints about unnecessary electrical consumption. Take that, Karen. Next, the entertainment. A satellite dish, bigger than a pizza, was mounted on the side, ensuring I could enjoy all the channels Karen probably tried to ban from the neighborhood. I pictured her peering up with her binoculars, fuming as I blasted monster truck rallies and polka music from my rooftop haven. Inside, I went full comfort. A plush couch perfect for lounging and watching the sunset, and the HOA's frustrated faces. A fully stocked mini-fridge because what's a rooftop retreat without a cold beverage? And of course, a top-of-the-line coffee maker, essential for those mornings when I wanted to enjoy a cup of joe while basking in the glory of my HOA defiance. But the real magic happened outside. I transformed the RV's rooftop deck into a haven of relaxation and petty amusement. Comfortable lounge chairs, perfect for sunbathing and HOA glaring. A barbecue grill, because nothing says screw you to the HOA like the smell of sizzling burgers wafting down to their perfectly manicured lawns. And, for the ultimate touch, a telescope, pointed directly at Karen's living room window. Just kidding. Mostly. Life on the rooftop was glorious. I'd spend my evenings up there, sipping lemonade, grilling up a feast, and enjoying the panoramic view of the neighborhood. When the HOA board members inevitably held one of their impromptu driveway meetings, I'd casually stroll out onto the deck, wave down at them with a cheerful grin, and maybe even offer them a burger, which they'd, of course, refuse with indignant sniffs. "Enjoying the view, Karen?" I'd call down, my voice laced with mock concern. "Need any help with those petunias? They seem a little droopy." Their faces would turn an interesting shade of purple, a mixture of anger, envy, and utter defeat. They couldn't touch me. They couldn't find me. They couldn't even reach me. I was living the dream, the rooftop dream, a testament to the power of creative pettiness and the indomitable spirit of a homeowner pushed to their limit. And the HOA, trapped in their own web of rules and regulations, could only watch and fume. The HOA's reaction to my rooftop RV was a symphony of sputtering outrage. They buzzed around like angry wasps, their carefully constructed world of suburban order disrupted by my audacious display of defiance. Karen, of course, led the charge, her voice a shrill siren of indignation. "This is preposterous!" she shrieked, her face contorted in a mask of fury. "A camper on the roof? It's a monstrosity. It's a safety hazard. It's... Words failed her, and she sputtered into silence, defeated by the sheer absurdity of the situation. The HOA board members, a collection of equally flustered rule followers, scrambled to find a legal basis for their outrage. They cited height restrictions, zoning violations, even the possibility of structural damage to my house, as if my roof couldn't handle a little extra weight. But I, armed with a stack of permits and a mischievous grin, was ready for them. "Height restrictions?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "But Karen, you've never complained about Mrs. Higgins' 2-story gazebo, or Mr. Henderson's towering oak tree. Why is my RV suddenly a problem?" "Zoning violations," I continued, pulling out a folder filled with official-looking documents. "I've already obtained a permit for a rooftop accessory dwelling. It's all perfectly legal." "Safety hazard?" I chuckled. "I've had a certified engineer inspect the structure. It's more stable than your HOA's authority at this point." The HOA board members sputtered, their arguments crumbling like a poorly built sandcastle. They were trapped in their own web of rules and regulations, outsmarted by my meticulous planning and my unwavering commitment to petty revenge. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final, gloriously absurd trick up my sleeve. "And for those of you concerned about aesthetics," I announced, my voice dripping with mock sincerity, "I'd like to assure you that my rooftop RV is not just a camper, it's an art installation." A collective gasp filled the room. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "An art installation," she sputtered. "That's ridiculous. It's an RV." "Precisely," I replied, a mischievous glint in my eye. "It's a commentary on the absurdity of HOA rules, a symbol of freedom and individuality in the face of oppressive conformity. It's a mobile living sculpture." The HOA board members stared at me, their faces a mixture of confusion, anger, and grudging admiration. They had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and out-arted. And my RV, my rooftop masterpiece, stood as a testament to their defeat. While the HOA stewed in their impotent fury, the rest of the neighborhood embraced my rooftop RV with open arms. And maybe a little envy. Kids, those wonderful little agents of chaos, were especially enthralled. They'd gather on the sidewalk across from my house, pointing and whispering in awe. "That's so cool!" I overheard one kid exclaim. "I wish my house had a camper on the roof." "Yeah," another chimed in. "It's like a spaceship landed." "Maybe he's an astronaut," a third kid suggested, his eyes wide with wonder. I couldn't help but chuckle. My rooftop RV had become the neighborhood's coolest attraction, a symbol of rebellion and a source of endless fascination for the younger generation. Even some of the adults, those who weren't blinded by HOA-induced conformity, saw the appeal. "Stanley, Mr. Johnson, my perpetually grumpy neighbor, called out one afternoon. "That rooftop setup is something else. Mind if I borrow the blueprints? Thinking of adding a hot tub to mine?" "Sure thing, Mr. Johnson," I replied with a grin. "Just make sure you get the proper permits. Wouldn't want to upset the HOA." The HOA's attempts to silence me had backfired spectacularly, turning my RV into a beacon of individuality and a source of inspiration for the entire neighborhood. And then, the media arrived. A local news station, always eager for a quirky story, caught wind of the RV on the roof phenomenon. They sent a reporter and a camera crew to my house, ready to document my defiance against the HOA's tyranny. "So, Mr. Stanley," the reporter began, her microphone pointed at my face, "tell me, what inspired you to park an RV on your roof?" "Well," I replied, gesturing towards the HOA headquarters, "let's just say I have a unique relationship with our local homeowners association." The reporter chuckled. "I see. And what do they think of your unique landscaping choice?" "They're not thrilled," I admitted. "But hey, it's my house, my roof, my RV. What's not to love?" The news segment aired that evening, complete with dramatic footage of the RV installation, interviews with bewildered HOA members, and shots of me lounging on my rooftop deck, sipping a margarita and waving to the camera. It was a viral sensation, a David versus Goliath story that resonated with homeowners across the country. The HOA, once again, was the butt of the joke, their authority further undermined by my rooftop rebellion. And my RV, my symbol of defiance, had become a national icon, a testament to the power of creative pettiness and the enduring appeal of a good rooftop party. The HOA, reeling from the public shaming and the growing popularity of my rooftop RV, decided to take drastic measures. They called an emergency meeting, a last-ditch effort to regain control and extinguish the flames of my rebellious spirit. Little did they know, I was about to douse them with a bucket of irony. I received the meeting notice, an official-looking document demanding my presence to discuss my unauthorized rooftop structure. A mischievous grin spread across my face. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a showdown. The meeting room was packed, a tense mix of HOA board members, disgruntled residents, and a few curious onlookers who were probably just there for the entertainment. Karen, her usual air of authority, replaced by a thin veneer of desperation, called the meeting to order. "Mr. Stanley," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "we've received numerous complaints about your unconventional rooftop dwelling." "Unconventional?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "But, Karen, you've never complained about Mrs. Higgins' rooftop garden, or Mr. Henderson's second-story balcony. Why is my RV suddenly a problem?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Karen's face flushed red. "Those are different," she sputtered. They're attached to the house." "Ah," I replied, my voice dripping with mock enlightenment. "So it's not about the elevated dwelling itself, but about the method of elevation? Interesting." I pulled out a stack of photos, showcasing various rooftop structures throughout the neighborhood, a gazebo, a pergola, even a full-blown greenhouse. So if I were to, say, weld my RV to the roof, would that make it acceptable? The HOA board members exchanged panicked glances. They had been outsmarted, their own rules turned against them. They couldn't ban my RV without banning every other rooftop structure in the neighborhood, a move that would surely spark a full-blown homeowner revolt. All right, Mr. Henderson, the perpetually flustered HOA president conceded. "We'll amend the rules, but just for you, Stanley, and just for this one time." A wave of laughter rippled through the room. The HOA, defeated and humiliated, was forced to rewrite their precious rulebook to accommodate my rooftop rebellion. The new rule, a masterpiece of bureaucratic absurdity, read, "Non-permanent rooftop recreational vehicles are permitted, provided they meet all safety and structural requirements and do not significantly disrupt the community aesthetic, as determined by the HOA board at their sole discretion." It was a hollow victory for the HOA, a thinly veiled attempt to maintain some semblance of control. But for me, it was a triumph. I had outsmarted them, outpettied them, and forced them to acknowledge the absurdity of their own rules. And my RV, my rooftop oasis, stood as a symbol of my victory, a beacon of freedom in a world of HOA tyranny. Karen's resignation was less of a graceful exit and more of a defeated retreat. She stormed out of the HOA meeting, her face a mask of fury, her carefully coiffed hair slightly askew. The murmurs and chuckles that followed her out the door were the final insult, a chorus of mockery that echoed her downfall. The next day, a terse email landed in the HOA's inbox. "Effective immediately," it read. "I, Karen McDictator, hereby resign from my position as president of the HOA. I can no longer serve a community that refuses to uphold the principles of order, conformity, and aesthetic harmony." It was signed with a flourish, a final, defiant act of a queen dethroned. The HOA, exhausted from their battles with me and demoralized by Karen's departure, entered a period of reflection. They realized that their relentless pursuit of petty rules had backfired, creating a community of resentment and rebellion. They had become the villains of their own story, the antagonists in a suburban sitcom where the punchline was always at their expense. "Perhaps we've been a little overzealous," Mr. Henderson, the newly appointed HOA president, a position he inherited by default rather than by ambition, admitted at the next meeting. "Maybe, just maybe, we should focus on the bigger picture, the things that truly matter to our community." And so, the HOA, battered and bruised, retreated from their war on individuality. They stopped enforcing petty rules, they turned a blind eye to minor infractions, and they even allowed Mrs. Higgins to paint her house a vibrant shade of purple, much to Karen's hypothetical chagrin. The neighborhood, once a battleground of HOA tyranny, blossomed into a haven of self-expression, a testament to the power of creative defiance and the enduring appeal of a good rooftop party. My victory over the HOA deserved a monument, a permanent reminder of their defeat and my triumph. So, I commissioned a new sign for my rooftop RV, a masterpiece of petty gloating. It was big, bold, and impossible to miss. In bright, flashing neon letters, it proclaimed, "Dedicated to the HOA board's defeat, Est 2023. The sign was more than just a trophy. It was a symbol of freedom, a beacon of hope for all those who had suffered under the HOA's tyranny. It was a declaration that the little guy could win, that creativity and defiance could overcome even the most overbearing bureaucracy. And it was, of course, a constant source of irritation for the HOA, a daily reminder of their humiliating defeat. But I wasn't done yet. My rooftop oasis was missing one crucial element, the final touch of luxury and HOA mocking indulgence. A jacuzzi? A giant, bubbling rooftop jacuzzi, perfect for soaking under the stars while sipping champagne and watching the HOA board members pace nervously below. The installation was another spectacle, another crane-assisted feat of suburban engineering. The jacuzzi, gleaming white and impossibly large, was carefully hoisted onto the RV's rooftop deck, its jets bubbling with anticipation. I added a few finishing touches, underwater lights, a floating bar, and a rubber ducky wearing a tiny HOA hat. Because why not? The HOA, predictably, lost what little remained of their collective minds, but they were powerless. They had no rules against rooftop jacuzzis, yet, and they certainly couldn't argue with my art installation defense. They could only watch and fume as I enjoyed my rooftop spa, a symbol of their defeat and my ultimate victory. The HOA never bothered me again. They had learned their lesson the hard way. My rooftop RV, once a source of conflict, had become a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of creative defiance and the indomitable spirit of a homeowner pushed to their limit. And I, the once targeted resident, had become a local legend, the champion of individuality and the master of petty revenge. As I sat in my rooftop jacuzzi, the warm water soothing my battle-weary soul, I couldn't help but smile. The HOA's attempts to control me had backfired spectacularly, transforming my home into a haven of freedom and absurdity. And the RV, my gleaming, jacuzzi-equipped, HOA mocking fortress in the sky, was a constant reminder that sometimes the best way to fight the rules is to break them, creatively. The neighborhood, once a battleground of HOA tyranny, had blossomed into a haven of self-expression, a place where rooftop RVs and jacuzzi parties were not just tolerated, but celebrated. And as I gazed out at the twinkling lights of the community, a sense of peace and triumph washed over me. I had won. The HOA had lost. And the rooftop RV, my monument to petty revenge, stood tall, a beacon of hope for all those who dared to defy the rules and embrace the absurdity of suburban life.